The day many of you have been waiting for a long, long time. So we're going to do the live emergency podcast reacting to the news that the Dolphins and general manager Chris Grier have agreed to part ways.
You are Locked On Dolphins, your daily Miami Dolphins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Miami, welcome to another episode of Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day here on the Locked On Network. I'm your host, Kyle Krabs, a lifelong Miami Dolphins fan, host of Locked On Dolphins, co-host of Locked On NFL Scouting, author of Touchdown Miami on Substack, NFL staff writer for A to Z Sports, and your host here for this emergency podcast live stream on Friday, October 31st. Happy Halloween. Hope you guys are dressing up, going to have some fun, get some candy with the kids. Today's episode of Locked On Dolphins is brought to you by Mazda. Like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every move count, pulling off the unexpected is only the beginning. Stay tuned later for highlights of this week's Mazda's moving the game forward. Mazda, move and be moved. Here's what I don't want to do. I don't want to get up here and celebrate somebody losing their job, although I think change was necessary, right? The thing that I was most interested in off of your second game in 3 games where you failed to score an offensive touchdown, you're the national spotlight game, and you get absolutely smoked with errors, with easily avoidable issues, with talent deficiencies, with the broadcast putting the camera on the fans leaving early and the empty seats and the paper bags and all that stuff, right? Was, okay, is this the bottom for Stephen Ross? Is this as low as this has to go for us to wake up this morning and say, yeah, I can't do this anymore? Because I did the post-game squad show with Grease and Z, and I said that. I said, I don't know how many more of this I can do. And sure enough, the news comes out about an hour ago. I've been doing a YouTube shorts. I've been doing written stories. I had a story I was halfway done about a personnel move and it being the latest black eye for Chris Grier, and that got blown up because Chris Grier's out as the general manager of the Miami Dolphins. And Chris Grier's held the title since 2016. He's had unquestioned control of the football operation since 2019. He, of course, was the architect of the Trust the Porpoise, spin off the Sixers, all the draft picks, tear it down to the studs, rebuild. And it was a life cycle that had some highs, but not enough highs and not enough sustained success and way too many personnel shortcomings and in my opinion, way too many shortcuts, right? And that's how you end up in this spot. Now at 2-7, Chris Grier leaves the Dolphins with a record as the general manager of 77-80. And as I said, 2 of the last 3 games, the offense failed to score a touchdown. So there's a lot of layers to a decision like this. There's what the announcement that's already been made is that Champ Kelly is going to serve as the team's interim general manager. This is not the first time that Champ Kelly has served as an interim GM. He did it with the Raiders. So he was an executive. They fired Dave Ziegler. Champ Kelly becomes the interim GM, gets him through the end of the season. Then they hire Tom Telesco. Champ stays on staff and goes back to a assistant general manager spot. And then he agreed to leave the Raiders last winter. Champ comes here. And this was the hire that when it happened and you heard Champ Kelly's coming on, it kind of raised my eyebrows. And sure enough, now you're in a position where you can leverage that experience. And there's an interview that Champ did after the draft, the year that he served as the interim GM. And I thought it was really interesting because he talked about being that bridge between being on staff for somebody else, serving as the interim spot, and then as a new general manager is hired in the winter, right? Because for all assumptions, the Dolphins are going to choose somebody over the next 3 months, and then there's going to be a general manager hire at the beginning of the winter, when the regular season ends and when you're into the postseason. You're going to hire somebody to run your football op. And that person is going to have to come in and assimilate with all of the information that you are currently collecting in the here and now. Champ Kelly, when he was brought to the Raiders, he was brought in to totally overhaul their scouting process and their scouting department. And now he already has experience of taking somebody else's stuff and then delivering it to somebody else who's going to serve as the primary decision maker. And that is really important for me as I think about 2026 offseason is a critical foundational offseason for the next chapter of the build. So you have to have your ducks in a row. You can't have communication breakdowns on. We remember when Chris Grier was at South Carolina 2 weekends ago and Twitter's minds melted because Chris Grier was doing a college eval and they said, oh, see, Chris Grier's untouchable. He's not going to get fired because he's out here scouting the college quarterbacks. It's kind of just how the calendar works, right? And that's where taking what this staff that's been in place has been doing, you have to have a conduit for that. And I don't know if it was foresight. I don't know if were expecting this to be a contingency plan for them, but it's fallen into a place where I personally like the choice because you had an assistant GM in Marvin Allen, but you also brought in Champ Kelly, and Champ Kelly's been in the building for more than half a year now. So he knows how everybody works. He knows what everybody's responsibilities are. That's a really valuable piece amidst this transition, right? Like I'm not going to get up here and do the laundry list of Chris Grier did that and Chris Grier did this. And you guys know what it is. We didn't draft nearly well enough, and we definitely didn't draft damn near anywhere close to often enough in the heart of this rebuild. And that's how you got all these guys that are rookie class guys that are out here playing all these snaps. You get a guy like Taj Washington out here making mistakes in a critical moment early in a game, and the game melts down on you because of issues like that, because you don't have depth because you were top heavy. They explained the whole defensive tackle thing, why they had to rebuild the defensive tackle room and say, well, we had Christian Wilkins and Zach Sealer. They both took 75% of snaps. We didn't need any more defensive tackles. What happens when one of them leaves? The same thing happened at wide receiver now, where you got Devon Achane out here running routes as a wide receiver. And traditionally backs and their targets in the passing game, pretty low yield. But when you ask Achane to do wide receiver things, the EPA's per target's actually twice as bad. But he's the fast guy that you want to plug in. Right? This doesn't absolve Mike McDaniel from his shortcomings either. Right? And the report, and they talk about the future. And we're going to talk about the future, right? So that's SpongeBob meme with Squidward, the clarinet, I think. We're going to talk about the actual future down the line a little bit. But the immediate future, Mike McDaniel is expected to finish the season as the team's head coach. And I will tell you this right now. The fate of Mike McDaniel is in his players' hands. Stephen Ross thinks he knows what he thinks about the head coach of the football team. But these players now have to perform. And that's why, for me, you had to do something. Because if you continue to just grossly underperform and there continues to be absolutely nothing in the way of accountability or a move, what kind of reinforcement, positive or negative, are you giving those within the organization about performing below expectations and performing below standard? You're indirectly saying that it's okay. You just got smoked in a showcase game. Smoked. The only show in town last night. And for that, now, as you evaluate the rest of these pieces of this puzzle to understand, hey, if we perform bad, yeah, we are out of here. You know, Chris Grier's been perceived as, right, the Teflon Don. You can't touch him. He's not going anywhere. He's out. And you can frame it however you want. Bill Belichick and the Patriots mutually agreed to part ways too, right? At the end of the day, you don't need to mutually agree to part ways if that conversation doesn't have to be had because the team performs. The team hasn't performed. And now, at the very tippy top, from a football operations standpoint, at the very tippy top, the Dolphins are guaranteed to have foundational change. And I thought it was necessary at the end of the year last year, but I understand if you had concerns about what the team's cap situation was and a coach that just got a contract extension and you just extended the quarterback. If you felt those things were restrictive for you getting a good candidate, so you take a foundational year and you don't spend money and you cut the cash budget and you get a year closer to being able to transition away from the other powers that be, where it's more digestible now. You've got some more young players in the trenches. If that was a necessary evil to go through, and then you give him a chance to fix it, but if it doesn't work, then we're just going to go in a different direction, and that's how we get to where we're at now. I'm okay with that. Change is here now. It is here now. We're going to get into Stephen Ross's statement around this decision. That's coming your way next here at Locked On Dolphins, the emergency podcast. Make sure you guys stick with us. Today's emergency podcast episode of Locked On Dolphins is brought to you by Mazda's moving the game forward. For those who believe it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. There are moments who do more than put points on the board. They move crowds, culture, and keep the game moving forward. This week's moment that moved the game forward is unfortunately not in the Dolphins' favor. We mentioned it already. It was that Taj Washington fumble where the Dolphins forced the punt early. They had points on the board, chance to continue to move the ball and really kind of have an advantageous game script. And you gave Baltimore the shortest of fields. When you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. And just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. Today's episode of Locked On Dolphins is also brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA is back. There's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss a start of a game or you want to ride a hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can combine your live bets in a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. Keeps every game exciting, especially when your team is making a late push. Right now, FanDuel giving new customers $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com, sign up, play your first game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. I tell you what, I feel like the fine print at the end of the infomercial guy, because I got a lot in here, and I'm going to forget probably 40% of it. And it's always risky to do the podcast live because of exactly that. I'm going to finish the record and click end stream, and the hundreds of you who are tuned in live now and reacting to it, it's great to see all of you on a Friday midday, especially after a rough loss last night, right? So I appreciate you guys tuning in and hearing my initial thoughts. There's going to be a lot of thoughts. So stick with me, whether it's on A to Z Sports, whether it's on Touchdown Miami, whether it's here on Locked On Dolphins, either in short form on the shorts or on the actual podcasts. I have been prepping for about a month now since you started 0-3. Been working on a GM hot board of candidates that I think might make some sense, or candidates that I want to explore. And I am very much of the open-mindedness. I don't like to kind of come in with the end in mind and only feel like there's one appropriate name. I have some criteria that I think are really important for what a general manager for the Miami Dolphins should and should not look like based off what have been the things that have given you hardships in the past. Where have been your blind spots? What needs to be different from an organization standpoint and a chain of command standpoint and a football ideology standpoint and a leadership standpoint? There's a lot. And we're going to get into all of it, but not today because there's 30-something names on that list. And we'll work through them. Kind of like we do draft prospects, right? You get to late March, early April. I'm probably doing 8, 9, 10 shows a week, and we're doing as many as we can, and we're trying to be as informed as we can about all of the options so that we know whatever decision they make, whether it's good, bad, otherwise, we know what to think and we know what the pros and the cons are of it. So we have some idea of what we think we should expect, although you never know until a decision's made, right? It's like scouting players. But with that said, I do want to get to the statement that was released by Stephen Ross as far as this decision. It was a pretty extensive statement from Stephen Ross. This morning, I made the decision along with General Manager Chris Grier to mutually part ways. I have incredible respect for Chris and his family, and I want to thank him for his many contributions to the Miami Dolphins over the last 26 years. As I assessed the state of the team and in my discussions with Chris, it became clear to both of us that a change could not wait. We must improve in 2025, 2026, and beyond, and it needs to start right now. Champ Kelly will serve as the interim general manager effective immediately, and we will begin our search process for a new general manager. I want to thank Champ for stepping in and his commitment to the Dolphins' success this season. There's a lot of football left to play, and we all need to fight even harder. I've always been, and remain committed to building a winning team that consistently competes for championships. I'm incredibly proud of our leadership as an NFL organization and our continued commitment to the community, but our performance on the field and our team building process have not been good enough. There are no excuses. I want to thank the fans for their continued support and passion for the team. You deserve a championship caliber team you can be proud of. There's much work ahead to return the Dolphins to sustained success, and that work begins now. Finishing the season strong, evaluating all areas of football operation, and moving forward with a clear vision of the future. It was really important for me personally to hear something from Steve Ross, right? Because Steve Ross doesn't talk. He doesn't talk to the media. He's not a public figure that's readily available to talk about the football team. And there's times where I think I want to hear a lot from Stephen Ross. And then I hear what Woody Johnson did at the owners' meetings last week. And it's like, Steve, just stay up in the box and watch the games. Right? Like, I don't need to hear from you that bad. To have Woody Johnson out here dumping on the team's starting quarterback, right? But Steve's been so much of the polar opposite that you're just sitting here and you're watching these games unfold and you're thinking, what is his perception of the product on the field? Is he okay with this? Is he not okay with this? How close is he to thinking a change needs to happen? How complacent is he? Right. And you know how invested he is because of the money that he's invested into the community, into the Miami Gardens facility, into Hard Rock Stadium, into Baptist Health Training. There's no question he has always put his money where his mouth is. And this has not been a question of money. It's been a question of who and people. And this business, just like everything else in the world, is a people business. And I think as you saw the 19 forward iteration of the Dolphins under Chris Grier progress, what became very apparent to me was Chris's, what was perceived as such a great strength was actually a weakness in the lack of conviction of what he, as the general manager of the team, who's responsible for every person you bring into the building. His conviction was lied in his subordinates and what they wanted. Right? Well, Brian Flores wants this. Mike McDaniel wants that. What about you're supposed to be the checks and balances person. Well, Mike McDaniel comes in and has this massive plea to football operation that we need skill players, not trenches players. And that plan worked at first. With 22 in the first 3 quarters of 23, the vision and the selling point and Mike, the whole reel of the Tua throws, and we need separators and let him be a point guard. And that was Mike McDaniel, right? And on one hand, that was right, but the pathway to sustained success, that's what Steve Ross keeps mentioning here, consistently competes for championships. Sustained success, a championship caliber team, work ahead to return the Dolphins to sustained success. This game hasn't changed. I was just reading up on Chris Shula on The Athletic a couple weeks ago about him, putting him on my head coaching hot board, right? And he's the grandson of John Shula, and the story's talking about things that Chris would talk to his grandfather Don about. And Don said, the game's never going to change. You got to block and you got to tackle. Those are the certainties of football. So as the executive, and when you have the changes, right? Like, okay, we want to draft young talent and get them in the pipeline and develop them so that they're ready to step into a role. So we're going to draft Eric Ezukama, and we're going to draft Channing Tindall. We're going to draft Cam Smith. Right? But then you don't have any consistency with the scheme that you run. It's Josh Boyer. It's Vic Fangio. It's Anthony Weaver. Channing Tindall had 3 different defensive coordinators in his first 3 seasons. How many different offensive coordinators did Tua Tagovailoa have when he first got here? You want to talk about having a plan to develop players, instability underneath of you, you're never going to develop players. And then you go from, we want to draft toolsy guys, to, hey, we're on a limited budget this year. We need to reinvigorate the trenches. Let's draft perceived high floor prospects that we can plug in and play this year. Right? You're chasing the issues instead of foundationally saying, this is how we do business. This is how we operate. This is how we draft. This is how we handle free agency. And then if a too good to be true opportunity comes along, yeah, you can break your own norms and trends. It's the Packers with Micah Parsons. But you know what the Packers do otherwise, whether it was Ted Thompson or now it's Brian Gutekunst? They're consistently drafting, and they're drafting trenches. They draft defense, offensive linemen. They proactively go after quarterbacks before they need them. They had Favre, and they drafted Rodgers early because he fell in their lap. Then they had Rodgers, and Jordan Love falls in their lap, and they trade up with the Dolphins of all teams and go get him. And that's just one organizational example of an organization that has had stability, but has also had like pillars foundationally of who they are. And when the person that's responsible for everything that happens in the organization at the end of the day, his identity is, well, I don't know, what do you want? Right? Makes it hard. Makes it hard because change underneath of you is inevitably going to happen. So we heard from Stephen Ross. This decision's been made. Chris Grier mutually agreeing to part ways with the Dolphins.